We're going to be redoing this hub crew scene. And in this hub crew scene, there's a few things that are inefficient. One of them is this. I mean, it's obviously right in your face. What I've gone ahead and done is renamed all of these files here so that we have an incremental order, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. And what we're going to do is just improve this. Okay, so one of the first things I'm going to do is add a new variable. It is going to be called crew portrait size. It's going to be an integer, and we're going to give it 14. Because our last number ends on 13, and we start at 0. That means that there are 14 total crew portraits available. So let's go ahead and grab one of these out of here, and we're going to just close up this array. And then we're going to move down here and make some improvements. So when this is ready, what we want to do is actually load in all of those portraits so that they can be used for generation. So we're going to do for n in crew portrait size. We will then push the portrait and load it on the fly into the array. And we can do this by, we're going to push it into this array here, which is called crew RNG portrait static. So it's going to be crew RNG portrait static. We're going to do pushback, and then we're going to do load, and then we're going to we had that on the clipboard here, so we're actually going to just do load, but not preload. And we're going to rename this crew 001 to a %s. So we're doing string interpolation where we're replacing this value here with an actual number. And we do that by doing % and then n. So this n is going to be applied to this value or this section of the string here. Okay, and now that we've pushed that back, there is one other issue which comes from the runtime. So when I actually go and play this scene, what we're going to end up seeing is, let me go ahead and show you. 1 second. Let's do. We're going to focus the game here so that you can see it. So here's our game. And as you can see, there's only 3, which generally speaking in our code, you'll actually see that we are generating 14, right? So that's kind of an issue there, right? So we're gonna see what's going on with that. And sorry for that weird glitch with OBS. Okay, so what happened? Like, why is it only generating X amount? So let me explain. So because we're pushing these things into the array, it's going into generate random crew, and it's not using the size of the array to do the generation. It's using whatever it found here. So during runtime, it's only getting some of it. So what we're going to do is make it so that it doesn't use this static variable here that's just being applied at the beginning. Like, we want it to actually use the true size of the array. So instead of doing crew RNG portrait length, we're going to do size, and then we're going to just subtract 1 like that. And what that should do is guarantee that we end up with the correct amount of generated, 1 second, the correct amount of generated, how do I explain this? The correct amount of generated pieces of code here. It looks like I'm having trouble getting it to show. Give me a second. Let's see if I can get it to, there we go. Okay, so now we can see here's all the different crews, right? So that's generating how it should be. All right, so let's do some more refactor work and get this cleaned up, because one of the things that we have here is like we have some things that are just kind of named weird, which is like non-standard. So I'm gonna go ahead and just refactor this. So if I double click this and hit Control D a couple times, it's gonna let me select a bunch of things at once. And what I can do is call this crew portraits. You know, that's much, that's a much cleaner name for it. And then we also have like this cell index here, which, you know, it's not exactly the right one. So what we're going to do is we're going to call this the it's selected index is what it is, and the naming of that doesn't exactly, like, I had to think about it, you know what I mean? You don't want to think about your variable names. So we're going to call this selected crew index, because now we know exactly which one is being selected. That's, you know, the name should reflect the one that we're looking for. And sorry about the scene thing again. It's hard to get it to reflect correctly. But anyway, you could kind of see what was going on there. All right, so now that you've seen that, we're going to go ahead and look at some of the other things that are going on inside of this code. One of them is like used icons, used bylines, used names, etc. And all of these are being pushed into here based on, it's like, oh, has this portrait already been used? Has this icon already been used? Has this byline already been used? And generally speaking, it's pretty important to kind of make this pretty efficient, because this can get like wildly inefficient, especially if it has to go through multiple times to get crew members not having the same bylines, crew members not having the same portraits, and so on and so forth. So the crew number should never exceed like the actual crew portrait size. So if crew number is greater than, or the crew portrait size, what we want to do is make it so that crew number equals crew portrait size. So this guarantees that if this value is ever changed, it never exceeds that value, so to speak. So these, even though these values exist or whatever, it doesn't exactly help like that these are just like hard-coded numbers. There's like a term that we call these in programming. It's something along the lines of like magic numbers. You know what they do, like as a developer, but if somebody else was to come in and see like this, it's like, oh, okay, you know, it's like crew number or something, right? What we actually want to do is clearly define exactly what these do. So this would be like crew minimum number, and then we could set that to 7, and then we can do add export variable crew maximum number, and that can be 14. And now we clearly know that it's going to generate a value between the crew minimum number and the crew maximum number. So there's a bit of like information regarding that. And what's great about that is that now that we have these as exported variables, I can go in here and tweak these. Like if I feel like there's too many crews available, or if I want to make a modified version of this scene, I can go in here and specifically say, hey, this port is only offering between this and this amount, or, you know, crew members or whatever. And we could also adjust the portrait size fairly easily as well, or make it like hard-coded or so on and so forth. But that being said, now that we have that, let's go ahead and take a look at how these pirate names are generated. Currently, they're in an auto load script, and this is something that like I recommended earlier on in the project, and they're being loaded like all the time. And realistically, we only need these crew names and these bylines and things like that only when we are actually working with them. Okay, so these crew names and stuff should only be available when we actually need them. So it's a perfect use case for a class where we only need it for a certain amount of time and only in the scene for a certain amount of time. Like here, it's just constantly just generating these names based on files and so on and so forth. So what we're gonna do is actually probably rip apart all of this utility code to print these names, because that's where I told the other guy to just throw it in there. You know what I mean? Like just put it in here for now. It'll work. We'll come back to it later. Well, now is later. So let's go ahead and look into what we can do to make this a little more efficient. So we're going to make a script, and it is going to be a utility script, but we're going to call this create new script. Sorry, create new script. We're going to call this crew name. Crew names. That's what we're going to call it. We're going to call it crew names. And we're going to do class name crew names. Now, when you do underscore here, this puts the crew names in the global scope. So this class specifically will actually be available anywhere now. So what that means is that I can go in here and I can type in crew names and then new and get an instance of that class, which is great. That's exactly what we want. So let's go ahead and work on this specific file and go ahead and pull apart what's in here. So everything that has to do with crew names appears to be just here. We have everything else in here is just kind of utility functions for like distance and converting RGB and so on and so forth. So it doesn't exactly belong in here anymore. So let's go in crew names, paste that in here, and let's go ahead and start by setting everything up for this class. What we want to do is when this class is initialized or when it's first created and you supply a new function to it, we want to load all the information from these files and have it readily available. Okay. And so that means we have get random line file name, right? So we have ways to actually pull this information, and then here it's actually splitting it into a line. So what we're going to do is use another function here. We'll call it file to array, and then we'll do path, which is going to be a string. We'll supply path here, and then we'll just return content split, and we can make it return an array of string type, right? Perfect. All right, now we have file to array, and we're going to go ahead and load all of that information in here. So we have these variables for the different, like the name, the last name, adjacent location, whatever. So let's go ahead and specify those actually specifically. So we're going to call this first names, and that's going to be an array of string. And we're going to go ahead and just start defining the rest of these. So we're going to make this copy of this a few times. This is going to be last names. This is going to be adjectives. And then this is going to be locations. And then this last one is going to be bylines. Okay. So now we know exactly which one or what's going on in each one of these. So we can actually take these specific text files and we're going to turn them into a pretty much instantly turn them into an array. So we're going to replace the majority of this stuff here in the front of it with so this is like the first names. So we're going to do self first names equals file to array. We specify the path, and that's done. And we're going to do that for the next one. Self last names file to array. And that's our next one. And we're going to keep going through each one of these and just make sure it should be doing exactly what it's doing, like just loading it into the file or into this class so that it's readily available. And we're not making multiple file reads for this specific class, because before what we were doing is reading the file every single time we were trying to generate a name, which is like wildly inefficient for us. So it would be much better to just read it once, have it readily available, and then we can go from there. Essentially just putting it into memory. Since this is a game, it shouldn't even take that much memory to begin with. I mean, there's not very many names and stuff in here. And when you make a class, it's only available in that class. So once that class is unloaded, we don't even need it anymore. Okay, so we have everything set up for reading those specific files. We have various errors that we need to fix. We have like get pirate name from file, get pirate last name from file, get random line, get random line, get random line, so on and so forth. And what's happening here inside of this is that it's going into the file name, it's randomly getting one based on the line size, and so on and so forth. So we can make this a little more efficient by directly specifying what we are looking for. So what we're going to do is use a enum to do that. And what I mean by this is that I can specify what I'm looking for here. So we're going to do, we're going to call this name type. And in name type, we're going to have first name last name, adjective, location, and byline. And if you don't know what an enum is, think of it like 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, it's just a shorthand way to identify what you're looking for. Now, in get random line, we're going to specify the type here. All right, so we're going to do type, and we're going to do name type. And then what it's going to do is we are going to make it so that for each type that we are specifying, we're going to have a way to easily pull that information out of that array. Now, the thing with this is that, yeah, I set it up with these variables here, but I'm just now realizing, okay, well, now I have this enum, and there's got to be another way for me to store this, right? Like having these as individuals and then doing a match or a switch statement here, that's a lot of code. So we can actually break this down even further by actually just making this something called, like, say, data. We're going to make it a dictionary, and we're going to open it like that. And then what we're going to do is push these files directly, not to the variable name, but to the actual dictionary here, okay? And I'll explain more about why in just a moment. So if I just replace all of this with like data, name type, first name, and we're going to do that for the next one here too, which is going to be last name, and then this is going to be adjective, location, and then this one's going to be byline. All right, so now these are all inside of the dictionary. We can remove all of that, all those variables up there. We don't need to define them now. And then our next step here is now we have a type. So what I can do is I can get the exact variable or the exact array that I want to use based on individual type. So all of these functions here are going to go away just with a few lines of code. And what I mean by this is that I can literally now what I can do is I can do well, hold on, let me think about this. Like there's a few ways we can go about it. I want to try to make this as clear as I can for you guys. So if we do, let's just call this like, let's call this text entries, or let's call this lines, and we'll do data type, okay? And then if lines, we're just going to return null. All right, so now we have like an array of string here is what this is, or potentially null. So it's either going to be if lines equals null or lines is empty, we're just going to return null. But otherwise what we're going to do is we're going to use the code that was kind of written here, where it gets a random index based on size, but we need to generate some RNG based on that. So in the initializer, what I'm going to do is create an RNG function here. So we're going to do equals RNG, or random number generator new. And RNG has a few different functions inside of it that are very, very useful. So I can do self RNG, then we can do random I range, and then we can specify between X and Y what value we want. So the first value is always going to be 0, but the last value is going to be lines size, okay? And then -1. Then down here, we're going to do line, or we're going to do this, we're going to call this line index, and then we're just going to do return lines line index. And that's going to give me a string, right? So now we can remove all this code up here, and cannot return value of type null as string, which is problematic because, I mean, I guess what we could do is instead of null, we could do index was out of bounds. I mean, generally speaking, we should actually never hit this, but at least that way we can fully specify, hey, this was out of bounds of our function here. So Now that we have a this function set up for getRandomLine, I can actually just remove all of this. This is all no longer necessary because now we have a great way to get individual line names based on type and so on and so forth. But these individual ones, I'm still looking at these. I haven't exactly checked into them. So let's go ahead and take a look at all the files and see what if this is even used. It looks like it's just declaring it, and we're using Control-Shift-F to look up the different variables that exist across the code base. But okay, yeah. So it doesn't look like any of these are actually like used in code right now. It kind of just looks like they're well, here's a byline, which is great, but we don't actually need this. So we have one reference there. We have no reference there. We have a reference for a full name, which is pirate name from file plus a space plus a last name from file. So yeah, okay, so we can just break this down into a more specific way, or a more specific result. So we're going to do, give me 1 second, it's going to be getRandomLine, and then we do crew names dot, name type first name, and then there's like last name. So first name plus a space plus oh wait, we need to do this after. I'm sorry, hold on. Yeah, it needs to be like this. Or actually, let's make this, no, that's fine. We can do it just like that. Yeah. Okay, so first name plus getRandomLine name type dot last name. All right, so that's going to return the full name, and then we can get rid of this like really weird code. No offense, just it's kind of strange. We could even make this even more clear. Like this is generating a first name. Like this. Like if you really want things to be super clear, and somebody else is going through and reading it, clearly define what is happening in here. You know what I mean? Like this is like very clearly defined now, where it's like, okay, so we're constructing a first name with a last name. The only thing that's a little bit weird is this extra space, right? Which, you know, it is a bit strange. Like I think there are some other ways we could go about kind of replacing it, so to speak. So string interpolation comes in like a few different forms, and one of the ways that you can do it is literally just like this. You can do %s. Okay, that looks a little strange at first, but when you actually give it an array like this, first name, last name, the result will actually just be first, last. I mean, you'll get basically something like this. And that's pretty clear for me, because it's just like I look at it, there's a string interpolation going on, I plug this into here, and I plug that into there. That's it. No more thinking about it. But yeah, there you go. There's a full pirate name there. Now, another one here we have is like get name simple. So this is very simple, obviously. We just do return getRandomLine, name type dot first name, and that's done. And then we could do get pirate name descriptive. And that's adding an adjective to the pirate name itself. So if we do get pirate name from file, which is like the full name or whatever, or the name itself. So like here you see like old Greg. So we just need to get an adjective it's essentially this, but you add a adjective in front of it. So we just do adjective, and then we return s like that, first name, and we do adjective first, just to kind of clearly define in that comment there, yeah, this is what's happening. This is your result here. You know, very simple stuff. Let's go ahead and get the rest of these done though. Return crew byline from file. I don't think we need this because we can just access it directly through get random line. So let's go ahead and just remove that. I don't think it's necessary. And then we also have like get pirate location name. And let's see, it's adjective, name from file, and then a location. So it's adjective, first name, location. So let's go ahead and pull that in here. It's almost similar to this one actually. So what we can do is, yeah, we'll just do it from scratch here, and then we'll do location, get random line, name, type, location, and then we just return pretty much this. Actually, no, it's pretty much this one. So let's get that comment in there to make it easier. And we'll remove all of this. And then we can just do another %s. And this one's actually name type dot, it is location, yeah, give it. Oh, get random line, not gr random line. And then location. Like that. Okay, so now we have all of the code here kind of updated. It's, I would say, a little bit simpler. Like we don't have additional functions that are kind of unnecessary. We're reusing as much code as possible. We're only reading the files once. And now we can go through and go to the hub and actually do some modifications there. Now let's take a look at what's happening in here. So we have like utility, get pirate name, utility, X, Y, Z, so on and so forth. So we're gonna go ahead and try and fix some of that code here. We're already coming up on like 30 minutes in this, but that's fine. You know, it's been pretty efficient. So let's go ahead and look at what we can do for generate random crew, right? So when we call generate random crew, it's only calling this function once, which is what we want. So what we can do is establish our crew name generator, like right here. Like we can make a new instance of it. So we're gonna call this crew name, and we're gonna do crew names. Yeah, we'll call it crew names equals crew names dot new. All right. And what new does is it makes a new instance of the class, loads it up, puts it into memory, so on and so forth. And now what I can do is directly access all of those functions here that we just created, which is great. Okay. So let's go ahead and look at what we need to do to actually use this, right? So we have utility. We have lots of little utility functions here. So I'm going to go ahead and just Control F and make sure that those are highlighted there so that I can kind of see them a little easier. And we're going to work on this code. So get pirate full name, right? So we're going to do variable crew name. And then we're going to do crew names, or let's call this pirate name. And we're going to reach into that function that we just made, which was crew names. We're going to do get pirate full name, right? Crew RNG, we're going to refactor this and rename it. So it's crew, this one right here. Go ahead and go through and break that down into pirate name. And there we go. One of the other things is we also have this thing called like used names, right? And what we're doing is we're going in and we are essentially pushing the data into the used names. And what's happening is that as we iterate through this crew number, we are increasing the crew number if there are similarities. So we keep going and increasing the size of the size of the array essentially, while trying to pull a crew name out. So we can make this a little more efficient by not having all these additional, like you could generate the same one over and over and over and over again. And that's, I mean, it's not like a high chance, but because we have 3 different ones and it's an or statement, that means that if this one or if that one or if this one all already exists, we need to generate another crew member again. So to improve the performance of this, what we can do is actually make it so that our individual crew names class maybe has like a variable that says, hey, once you use this, please remove it from the list. Okay. And the way that we can do this is maybe we want this class to also reset as well at some point. So let's make it so that we'll call it like reload. And then we'll put these files in here. We'll call self reload like that. And that's going to automatically repopulate all of the files in here. Now, when we initialize it, what we can do is say remove entry on use. I'll make it a Boolean, and we're going to set it to false initially, okay? And what this Boolean is going to do is remove entry on use. Or we'll call it remove on used. Yeah, that's a little bit better. And we're going to default that to false. And we're going to do self remove on used equals remove on used. So whatever value is specified in here, so if I go back into hub crew and I set this to true, what it's going to do is what we're going to do is make it so that when we use an entry based on an index, we will automatically remove that entry from the available lines, if that makes sense. And what we can do is actually rename index was out of bounds to no more entries available. So now that we have that, let's go ahead and look at how we remove it, right? So, okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna use remove at index. So we have like the lines, right? Or we have this like data type. So we're gonna go ahead and just directly modify the data type like this. Data type is empty. And then this is going to be data type dot size. And then we have like line index, and we do data type line index. All right. So the data that we are going to use, we want to make sure that this data is being assigned immediately to a variable so that we have access to it, right? So now we have that string here. And then what we're going to do is remove it. So we're going to do data type. And it's going to be actually just remove at, and it should just be line index. And then we can just return the line itself like that. And hopefully everything works out. That looks like it's good. Okay, so now we have it so that each or the data types are being removed, but only if we want to make it so that only if self.remove on used is set to true. So let's make that very clear here that it'll only happen when it's remove on used. All right, back to hub crew, right? All this right here, use names, use icons, use bylines, we don't need it now. It's all gone. We don't need any of that actually. And we can make it so that we're gonna refactor this crew number. Just call this crew to crew count to generate. And let's see. Okay, so we have this if statement here with an else statement. We actually don't need either of these. So we can copy all this right here, remove all this code right here, and paste that right in there, and there we go. Now we have a perfect crew almost every single time. So the RNG generation should automatically know, hey, I remove this entry, we no longer need it, and then that's it. So let's go ahead and run this and just see where we end up. It looks like we have a little bit of an error here. Pack string array. Our expected return type is array string. Give me a second. Oh, Godot was freaking out there for a second. I actually don't know why that's having a issue. Let's see. Expected return type is array string. So it's having an issue. Oh, it's a packed string array. Okay. Let me see. Let me see. Because I think there's a way to actually convert it to just an array, but I could be wrong. Nope. There's no way to do it. That's fine though. We're just gonna make this packed string array. Oops, packed string array. Just like that. Let's reload. And let's see, we have utility get crew byline. So we gotta fix that. So that's our next piece here. So we'll do crew names, get crew byline, and reload again. And let's see. No get crew byline. Okay, let's look at that again. Get. So we're gonna do get random line, crew names, name type, byline. And we'll call this byline. And then crew portrait RNG. Let's just call this crew portrait index, like that. And actually that needs to be portrait index, random range, crew list. Okay, load, and there we go. All right, so generally speaking, it looks like we have like duplicate portraits, which is fine. We didn't handle that, but none of the names and none of the bylines should ever be the same, which is exactly what we wanted. Oh, I guess you guys should, actually be able to see that. So let me show you again, like this. Oh, and it's of course not pulling the right window again. Let's go like that. Okay. All right, now you can see it. So we have all these different ones in here. Some of the portraits are duplicating, which is fine, like that's fine. It's the names and stuff that are kind of, we want to make sure they're different. But generally speaking, there we go. We have like the different names and everything, and that's kind of been improved there. So far what we've done is improved how the portraits are pushed into the array. We have made it so that the individual crew names are now in their own class so that they can be generated in a more efficient way. So like we're loading the files, we're making it so that they're removed when they are used. And then some other things in here is like we've removed some of the duplicate or the code that was like essentially pushing or increasing the array size infinitely until the correct value is shown. But yeah, generally speaking, like there's some general improvements in here that we've made just with this piece of code. There's still a handful of other things that I'd like to look at and try and improve, but we've already gone through and just improved what we could just here for making the crew name system a little more usable in other places. So I don't know, hopefully it's a little interesting for anybody that likes to watch code refactoring, but there you go. That's about it though.